Okay, all you Batman fans out there, you are listening to the Night of the Batman, and this is Jim Starlin, who had a little bit to do with Batman along the way. Have a good one.
Hey guys, this is Night of the Batman. I'm Alex, and I'm here today with.
This has been Juan from Superhero Stuff You Should Know, and I'm back on the show to talk about Batman Resurrection.
Nice. Can't
Yes.
can't wait to get into this. But before we do, I know we're gonna do a non-spoiler thing first. You were
Hmm.
telling me not a lot of people know about this book or don't know about like what's behind the book, basically. Maybe they've
Right.
heard about it.
Yeah, because we've been getting comments on our show too about, well, some people asking, are we going to cover, Resurrection? I'm just like, well, yes, but first off, I'm doing it, I've mainly, I was just like, you know what? I should come on your show because you're the only other person I know who has finished reading this. So I was like, we should definitely talk about it because I know you were originally thinking of doing your own solo review, and I was going to
Mhm.
do a solo review, and then I'm just like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. If we're both, we can just talk about it, and then, so this is and it'd be just way more rewarding anyway, I think, for
Mhm.
both of us to be able to talk about it. But yeah, we've been getting some comments about people not really sure, like, what is Batman Resurrection? Like, is it in continuity with certain things? Does it replace Batman Returns? So, but yeah, just to explain it, like, Batman Resurrection is a novel set between Batman 89 and Batman Returns. And it's written by John Jackson Miller, who it looks like he's made a career out of writing these types of books that are like in the little gaps of continuity of stuff because he's done a bunch of Star Wars stuff
Mhm.
that is listed in the back that I'm
Yeah.
sure kind of fits in. And this is one that is connected to it kind of tries to fill in the gap between Batman 89 and Batman Returns, as well as it does have some tie-ins to the Batman 89 comics, the first arc. The second arc that's currently going on, we'll talk about
Yeah.
that in the spoiler stuff, but that's probably because likely it was written at the same time, and we'll just leave it up to them to figure out that. But as I've said before, like Michael Keaton's Batman is kind of post the movies, post Burton movies, is kind of like the choose your own adventure Batman at a certain point.
Mhm.
People are just like, is the Flash Batman that he played in the same universe? I'm just like, you know what? I don't really care. I think he's just a possible future of the Burtonverse version, but not the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah. If you what's the thing they say? It's like, well, if you hated it, then no, it's not part of it. If you liked it, then of course it is. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like that kind of mentality. But yeah, I actually listened to a snippet or like a little bit of I'm blanking on the name of who interviewed him, but I did listen to an interview with the author, and he did say that he's pretty good at like being like a mimic of like certain like voices and stuff for like,
Mhm.
these movies. He also did say that he's obviously a fan. I think I heard that he saw it like 12 times or something, like 89, almost like pretty sure everybody else did back
Yeah.
then. So like yeah, we're in a good
Yeah,
company.
12 times.
Yeah, did you think that he kind of we're not to this part yet, but just for people that are interested, do you
Mhm.
think that it did kind of feel like the 89 world? Do you think that he had a good handle on the voices for those characters?
I think he did. I think that this world really comes to life, and I think a lot of people who had left comments for us on the 89 comics, who some of them felt a little disappointed that there wasn't more exploration of certain characters, like bringing back Alexander Knox, for
Mhm.
example, or expand. Some people wanted Chip Shrek to become a villain in the Burton verse. I'm just like, that dude, that dude's going to be lost without his dad. That's not
Yeah.
happening. But okay. And but those who were disappointed with that will love this because this has all the characters pretty much in
Yeah.
the 89 universe who are at least still, well, I mean, I was about to say who are still alive after 89, but technically, yeah, well, not to go into spoiler territory, but anyway, like this is one where like they practically bring back everybody, and it does really
Mhm.
feel like that world, to me, maybe even in some ways more so than the 89 comic because of how much they're like riffing, or Miller's riffing
Mhm.
off of the movies, setting stuff in between, pulling as well from stuff that was in the original scripts that didn't make it in, or stuff that's in the novelization that wasn't in the movie. So he's definitely doing that, and I think in some ways the hardest character to write in this universe in
Hmm.
many ways is the Michael Keaton Batman, because so much of how that worked in the movie was just his presence, and he said very little. But then if you're writing a novel, that's kind of difficult. It's just like he's
Yeah.
or a comic even, like it's you got to give him dialogue, and it can be difficult to make it. You can't make him too silent, right? You
Hmm.
can't have it all be internal dialogue, and even the internal stuff is going to be different from what you got in the movie because you didn't get the benefit of any of that. So naturally, there would be some feeling of it being different from the movies because of the fact that you get this internal stuff in terms of his thoughts that you just don't get in the movies. But I think he pulled it off in making it work, making it not only feel like the Burton verse, but also feel like its own thing, and finding ways to deepen it, finding ways to um, make it like engaging on the page because we don't have the benefit of the elfin music, though you could put it on as you read it,
Yeah.
or
Did
the
you do
visuals.
that?
I did for parts of it, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but we don't have the benefit of that, and even more so, right? We don't have the visuals like what Joe Quinones does great in the '89 comics. It's all based on prose in this novel, and so it becomes probably the most plot and character-driven thing in this universe so far. And I think that's what I love so much about it was that like it had to be like it had to have a very intriguing story. It had to pull you in for over what 400 pages, close to 400, yeah, over 400 pages, or so to be a full-on novel. That has to have an engaging story, Whereas
Yeah.
like I think the movies, a lot of our love for it like is from different elements that aren't necessarily based around the script. No offense to my previous guests like Sam Hamm and Daniel Waters, but they know the scripts were changed by those movies. But a lot of it
Hmm.
was based around the atmosphere or the performances or the music or the Burton visuals. Um, but here, again, it's a novel, so it has to have a lot more going on in terms of story and character internally, rather than stuff that shows up on screen that you can kind of read into, like the Burton movies are like. So, yeah, I think he definitely succeeded.
Yeah. Definitely. And yeah, like it's I know obviously this is I'm not telling tales out of school. I know that Michael Keaton used to take and cross out lines from the script, so like it's probably even harder to try to guess what Batman would say and
Right,
everything because if something Michael Keaton, I feel like that script would probably be minimized to like just the bare
right,
basic stuff.
right. Yeah.
But yeah, I think the highest compliment I would probably give this book, and it's something I think I told you, is that I am more interested in the villain than I'm interested with anything going on with Batman in this. I think that they really nailed Clayface in
Mhm.
this and just how sympathetic he is and everything. I think this is one of my favorite versions of Clayface, honestly.
I think it's the best adaptation of Basil Karlo.
Yeah, definitely.
Because again, the Batman the animated series was Matt Hagen, even though they drew on Basil Karlo with the actor thing, but that was Matt
Mhm.
Hagen's, and they, not to give too much away, but this version of Clayface is still somewhat rooted in Basil Karlo in the sense that he's not a full-on mud monster
Yeah,
thing. He can only really change everything from the neck up.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
That's
I thought that
interesting.
was cool.
Yeah, definitely. So I was thinking, unless we're out of did you have anything else for the non-spoiler section?
Not really, other than just like if you're a Burton fan or '89 fan and you want more of this world, like definitely pick this up. It's not going to be the only one in this. They've already pretty much revealed that there's going to be another book called Batman Revolution next year
Nice.
in 2025. And, it'd be spoilers to say who the villain is of that one, but I'm excited for that. Obviously, I'm going to have to review what happens this next year by the time that comes out, just so I'm up to date on Miller's version of this. But yeah, I mean, I think these books are in great hands.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys. So, now's the time that if you don't want to hear spoilers, just pause this, set it aside, go out, buy the book, read it, come back here and join us, and we'll just go ahead and dive into this. All right, everybody who either has read the book or doesn't care about spoilers, we're about to dive in. So here
Mhm.
we go. So where did you want to start with the Batman Resurrection?
Well, you wanted to do some sort of, we can kind of give a brief summary. We
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
remember everything out of this is 400-page book,
Yeah, there's a
so
lot.
there's a lot, but we can kind of, we'll glean through it. But essentially,
Gotcha.
we start with the origin of Clayface in this
Hmm.
version of events that is connected to Batman 89 due to the Smilex cosmetics, which I thought was really clever on
Yeah.
Miller's part because we've seen that version of Clayface in the animated series with the cosmetics
Hmm.
leading into it, and like we already clearly have that connection in 89 with him poisoning all the cosmetics, and Miller just really deepens, okay, like how did this affect people beyond what we saw in that movie, right? And I just in over 30 years of watching this movie, I'd never really thought about that. So that was already impressive to me in the first
Yeah.
few pages was like, oh, like yeah, of course this makes a lot of sense that like this would affect people in different ways. We've got this whole hospital ward where like people survived, but they have different unfortunate lasting effects
Hmm.
from the poison. And I thought that was an awesome addition to just the general mythos and continuing off of 89 and already was a good sign of where this book was going to go.
Yeah.
So
We
um go
we
ahead.
even have you talking about they bring all the characters back. We even have American Express card. Don't leave home without it. We have the two thugs from the last one. It's almost like Jay and Silent Bob when they show up a little bit. I'm like, wait, you guys are here? Like it's like
That was
one
a
of those
surprise too.
moments. Yeah.
So yeah,
I liked it. Like it was they captured their voices, but it's just like yeah, we're doing something else this time. I'm like, you guys survived after the last one? I don't know. That one guy seemed like he was kind of done. Like he was getting wheeled into an ambulance. He's back doing
no,
his thing, selling
yeah,
Smilex, I guess.
they do. Yeah, Miller carries over the whole, the shut up, like
Yeah, you
delivery
want
from
your
that
cut of this
guy.
money or not? Yeah.
Yeah, and then they also mentioned that he's got a thing for credit cards. I'm just like, okay, like this is clearly Miller's done his research. He's read the original scripts or the novelization as well, because the names Nick and Eddie are like you'll know those names from the script, but you won't really know those names from watching the movie. You'll just think
Hmm.
that the two muggers in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of a nice Easter egg. Did we need to bring them back? No, but is it cool that they're there? Yeah, it's
It's
kind of fun.
nostalgic.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
it sets what's the tone, I think.
yeah, that was like one of those moments I thought was really good. And then I mean this as an absolute compliment. Everything connects and everything is really cool, and they have all these characters, and the story really connects to the first one. Again, mean this as a compliment. Tim Burton might not have wanted to do this if this was a movie,
Mm,
basically. Like he is very much not like wanting to do stuff, but like if you wanted a really satisfying sequel, there's a lot of connective tissue. It almost feels like between Batman and Batman Returns that they're two different universes. And so like it's kind of cool seeing this version where they, like you said, try to tie everything back into each other with all these characters and have like an immediate follow-up. I don't know how long, because I know there's a time jump, right? Because like he at the beginning we have Basil Carlo, or he's not called Basil Carlo originally in this. It's
right,
like
his stage name, but it looks like the opening, the Clayface origin happens during Batman 89,
yeah.
like after Joker's already announced that he's poisoned like all the cosmetics. And then it says in chapter one, I
Hmm.
think, yeah, nearly 6 months ago, it says so like close to 6 months after Batman 89 is where the rest of the book takes place.
Hmm.
Um, which is a short period of time considering some of the other stuff that is covered. Because apparently as well, like Bruce and Vicky have already broken up during that time, which does make sense. And then the villain has already sort of the main villain, not just Clayface, but the big bad of all this, has already kind of redone his entire identity and
Hmm.
became this renowned doctor,
Hmm.
right? During this time, that's the head of Gotham General. I'm just like, less than 6 months is a pretty short period of time to do that, but if anyone can pull it off, it's this guy.
Yeah, pretty
So,
busy, right? But
um,
cool.
go ahead.
Oh no, it's keep going.
So yeah, we got and again, like to set the tone, we got the return of Alexander Knox, and I thought Miller did great in terms of setting up or continuing Alexander Knox in a way where it felt like he added to the plot. He wasn't in it too much, and he
Hmm.
didn't come off as annoying. Because I think that that could be an easy trap to fall into with the
Yeah.
character being just like, oh, he's the comic relief, so I just got to throw in these like snarky lines and have him pop up and do stuff and not really have much to do with the plot, or like he will have stuff to do in the plot, but he's in it too much. Like here, he was in it like just enough, and he's captured well. And then one of the other big surprises of who returns is Lawrence.
He had a
Lawrence,
he had a big role, and so did Knox. I was actually glad to see Knox back. I know that the
yeah.
only other time I've seen Knox, other than in Good Burger, where he mentions being in Batman '89, was that in Crisis, where he's like,
Oh
"Oh,
yeah.
we really need you, big guy," and everything. So it was just really great seeing him. I know that at the time, probably in '89, I used to think that he was just like one of those self-insert characters for the audience, not self-insert, like an audience insert so that
Yeah.
people got it. But like when you actually, and like listening to your guys' coverage, when you actually go into the script, he was supposed to be a lot deeper of
Mhm.
a character, definitely. Like even like that's one of the biggest tragedies that that original version of the script wasn't able to be realized.
Right, but I was curious too, since Miller was drawing off of the original scripts. I'm like, is he going to bring in, for those who don't know, in the original script, Knox is the one who figures out Bruce is Batman before Vicky, right? And then
Mhm.
ends up kind of blackmailing him because he's in
Yeah.
love with Vicky, but then he has this redemption arc and ends up making this heroic sacrifice at the end, as well as being like the guy who creates the bat signal. So
Mhm.
that's a big role that they then kind of cut down to just sort of the comic relief and the other guy who's third wheeling it when Bruce and Vicky are meeting. And I was kind of wondering if Miller was going to do something similar or carry that over into this one. But I'm glad he didn't in a way because it makes it feel like it's standing more on its own rather than like just drawing off or readapting stuff that was in, older stuff. So I'm glad that Knox is in this the way he's in it rather than trying to draw off of the original version of it.
Yeah, and then Lawrence, I did like him, even though like I feel like most of the time his motivation was, damn, I really want a new boombox.
I know. Lawrence is in this more than Bob is in Batman 89. I was like, I was not expecting this character to be such a big part of the story.
Doesn't he
Uh,
come back in the '89 comics too?
he
Like
is,
kind of.
yeah. Yeah, so it does fit, again, it does fit continuity wise because you see Lawrence once again with the boom box. I think he might be playing Fuck the Police or something. I forgot. He's playing something on the boom box when he's joined Two-Face, who's raiding the GCPD. So it already sort of planted in fans' minds that, oh yeah, Lawrence survived the cathedral thing. And I guess Miller had the same idea that because the last time you see Lawrence is like he jumps on, he's like, ha ha, and then he misses Batman and just falls through the floor. And in both this and in the comic,
Mhm.
it's revealed that he's still around. So he's survived it. There was like another, there's another floor underneath that he fell onto
Mhm.
after he crashed. So he didn't fall all the way down into like the other guy did.
There's a and we'll get into this later too, but there's definitely a reoccurring element of like that what people have long seen considered like a huge plot hole, like the whole cathedral thing, like why are
Yeah.
they up there? That's definitely one of those things that like at first I was a little bit like, are you just bringing it up to fill in like a plot hole, or is this like one of those things? I'm like,
Mhm.
why is he calling attention to this
Mhm.
kind of thing? But then as it goes on, you kind of realize that it's like it forms into the plot basically. Like it has
Yeah.
like a thing with the
Yeah,
plot.
because it kind of turns into what I thought was really cool wasn't just bringing that up because it's just like, okay, I get it. You want to fill that in, like what you
Hmm.
were bringing up. But then it started to turn into like, oh no, that's part of Batman's theory
Yeah.
that like this was a whole backup plan. Joker was always going to fake his death in some way at
Mhm.
the cathedral. Because I mean, I'll give him credit. When we got to that part, I was starting to question what I knew about Batman '89. I was like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, is is this actually happening? Like, is Joker, are we saying that this is, an imposter if we're part of the cathedral thing and that guy died and Joker, the
Yeah.
real Joker's still around? Like, he really got me because I'm just like, evidence is stacking up. I don't think that's the case, but the evidence is really stacking up here, and he does a good
Yeah.
job of convincing you that that could be the case.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of those, like I feel like a lot of narratives will do that where they're like they'll float like this thing where you're like, I'm not sure about that, and then like it'll actually like zigzag where like it'll be like,
Mhm.
actually it's not this. Like it's almost like misleading you and thinking that they're gonna go for this huge swing when
Yeah,
reality everything is kind of how you guessed it was before,
yeah.
which is how it is in this book where and I know you're going through the plot a little bit. If you want to save that reveal, we can with the whole like stuff with the Joker. I mean,
Yeah, we can, as we're going along, I'm basically I'm kind of jumping from plot point to plot point in the beginning as we go through the different Easter eggs that I've noticed.
gotcha. We'll
Obviously, the
save
latest
it.
one being, Lawrence, on this one. And then, we get this cool opening sequence of Batman saving Knox, which, didn't really happen in 89 at all, where they never really met the entire
Yeah.
time. So it's cool that that Miller's adding that in, and then it's shown that Batman has added the glider that he's going to use in Batman Returns already. And then Miller throws in a part where Batman has lenses in the cowl, which feels
Hmm.
like another connection to the 89 comics, because he does have those white lenses to make him a little bit more like the comic book Batman
Yeah.
in those the 89 comics. And then, he saves Knox, and we kind of establish a few plot points. One, of course, being that Lawrence has been in need of a box. I mean, not a box, a boss, rather than, and not just a boombox. And his boss now is Max Shrek. So
Yeah. I was like, I mean, I couldn't think of any reason why it couldn't be. So it's just like, interesting pull, but I was like, last person I expected to see here.
yeah, especially, I mean, I think it was announced that like you'll see Shrek in it, but I wasn't thinking that he'd be connected to Lawrence. I just thought like,
Mhm.
oh, like Bruce is gonna have a meeting with Max Shrek at some point and or whatever. Like I didn't
Yeah,
think it was
throw
gonna
a
be like
file
this.
at him.
Yeah, exactly. But here, like Max Shrek is, uh, there's kind of a connection where they mentioned that, Grissom didn't even want to touch Shrek. Like that, it's again connecting the universes because there was no mention of either of them, right? There's no
Yeah.
mention of Grissom in Returns. There's no mention of Shrek in 89 because they didn't have this connected universe in mind. But
Mhm.
Miller's working from a state of this being a connected universe and this all existing in the same realm. So it was kind of a cool plot point, which then leads Lawrence to find the new boom box where a voice speaks to him, which is, hinted at to be the Joker who's, supposedly still alive at this point. As
Did you connect those dots earlier, like that might be the Joker? Because I wasn't sure at first, like the mysterious voice and everything. Did you kind of have like, because I think at that point that the whole reveal that we're kind of alluding to hadn't really happened yet, so I wasn't sure. I thought it was maybe because there was some months that passed. I'm like, maybe it's Clayface. Like I thought that at
true.
one point, yeah, on the
Yeah,
radio.
I mean, it hadn't been established yet that Clayface was. I mean, again, this is the spoiler part, but
Hmm.
Clayface impersonates Joker in this book, but it hadn't been established that that was what was happening, and I
Yeah.
figured that was what was happening based off the whole thing about it's called Resurrection. You've got this thing that has the Joker on the
Oh, I
back that
don't
says,
even have the book. I just had the audio book, so I
"Oh,
didn't even
okay,
know
yeah."
about that. That's a reveal for me.
It's this funny thing about Joker is there's two in every deck with the Joker card,
Nice.
so he's already hinting at you that like is the Joker back, and so I was just like, well, we've got Clayface in here, and we know the twist in Arkham City.
Yeah.
That was in the Clayface Joker feud comic back in like the 50s or 60s or so. And then there was even a script that I never got a hold of, but
Hmm.
apparently there was a writer at the time named Ian Mansfield who had written a book called not a book, a script called The Joker's Revenge to
Oh,
bring back Jack Nicholson's Joker. But it was hinted at that like it was going to be Clayface the whole
yeah.
time. So it sounds like Miller's doing something or did something similar here with that. But yeah, I kind of figured it was, and then I bounced between the audiobook like you were listening to and
Hmm.
reading the the physical book just based off of whether I was driving or something.
Yeah.
And I think Will Dameron, the narrator there, kind of puts on a very somewhat subtle Nicholson impression
Yeah.
in that part. So that's where I'm
That's
just
why
like,
I
it's
didn't
probably the Joker.
that's why I didn't really that's why it kind of confused me at first because I wasn't even thinking Joker at the time because I clearly hadn't seen the back of there and like the impression becomes much less subtle later. So like in my head I
Mhm.
was just like, who could that have been? Like I was like I think I was even thinking at one point, but just because the voice actor didn't put a lot of emphasis on it, I'm like, is that like Shrek or something? Is he like messing with them? Because like
Mhm.
I know we also meet and I'm sure you're going to build to this soon. We meet the rest of Max from because we only saw Max's hand in return, so we actually get to meet the rest of them kind
Oh,
of
Fred,
in
Fred, yeah, 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 Fred
Fred.
Atkins.
I don't know where I got Max from. My Max Shrek, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, we get
Yeah.
to meet him briefly.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of like, okay, kind of cool. That we've got this set up already. Is the Joker back? And then you've got, Batman dreaming about that night up at the cathedral, and then he
Hmm.
wakes up and surprise, he doesn't wake up next to Vicky. He wakes up next to Julie Madison, who's now been introduced into the 89 universe, except it looks like we kind of have something very casual going on, or not something that's very deep, you
Yeah,
know?
no, not at all. What did you because I know later on technically this is the same universe and we do meet Julie. I
Mhm.
say meet. And Batman and Robin, I think she
Mhm.
has one scene and it's just like that's it basically. So
Right.
at least with this we get more of a feel for her. I think in the early comics she didn't really have much of a personality. What did you think of this kind of vapid, kind of very like shallow, selfish version of Julie Madison?
It made sense because you don't want to repeat the same stuff with Vicky Vale, I
Hmm.
think. So if it's yet another civilian love interest who learns that he's Batman and is the light to his darkness, it just kind of feels like we're treading over the same ground.
Hmm.
So I didn't mind it. I think Julie, if there's any Julie Madison fans out there, you're kind of short shrifted considering if you got the choice of Batman and Robin or something like this. But it also made sense to have her in it because of the Clayface connection and in the early Golden Age comics with Clayface, Clayface was brought onto the same, like the murders were happening on the set that Julie was working on,
Hmm.
in the movies. So what she was because she had aspirations of becoming an actress and she was an actress. So Miller naturally carries over the same thing. So it does make sense that you would have another character who represents or gives Bruce a connection to showing up at the theater rather than him just thinking like, yeah, I should probably show up at the theater so that people can see Bruce Wayne. So
Yeah.
I liked that she was in it and that she was different from Vicky because I think the trap could have easily been kind of just repeating the same beats.
Hmm. Definitely. The and I know later on we kind of get more into it. But like, what did you think of like? Because you said it made sense earlier, like them kind of. I know they go farther into it in the book, but like in '89, I kind of got the vibe that him and Vicky were kind of going to stay together based off how that movie ended with the oh, I'm not the least bit surprised whenever he's up
Mhm.
there, looking at the signal and everything. Did that kind of like the breakup kind of come out of nowhere for you? Because it did for me personally.
You
Like
talking about
just
in the book or in when it was mentioned in Returns?
um kind of both. Like because in '89 it kind of leaves off with you thinking they're gonna stay together, and then behind the scenes stuff probably happened,
Hmm.
and then she didn't obviously return for the sequel because Burton wanted to do
Right.
something different. Do you think that I don't know, like do you think that that's like retroactively they decided to break them up or
Well,
like I don't know.
like we talked about in Batman Returns, it was because they weren't going to bring Kim Basinger back anyway, right?
Hmm.
So there had to have been a breakup in between. When that happened, because there could you could say that there's a a real time gap between 89 and Returns, where
Hmm.
like 89 takes place in 89 and Returns takes place in 92, in which case there's plenty of years in between. So
Yeah.
it was a little bit surprising that because Miller did announce that Vicky was going to be in this. So it was a little surprising that they had already broken up at
Yeah.
this point so soon after 89. But the reasons behind it, I thought made a lot of sense because of the fact that it was hinted in Returns that it was due to Vicky's difficulty with his duality, his dual lives, and so it made sense that there would be uh like further exploration of what that meant from Returns. And I think one of the things that I had thought of that is in this book, so I guess, we thought alike, was the idea that some people brought up, including Sam Hamm, that like, hey, you took out the killer of your parents. Why are you still doing this?
Yeah.
Right. Like that was Hamm's criticism of just like, okay, well, if the Joker is the guy who killed his parents and you defeat the Joker in the first movie, then why is he continuing to do this? And Vicky's kind of the voice of that, which I thought was very appropriate, considering that it's a relationship that's going to end and it's her not really liking the fact that this guy is constantly out there putting himself in danger. And Miller wisely has her voice that so that Bruce can respond and say that it was never really just about revenge. It was never really about finding the parents' killer, which is something I maintain too, where I'm just like, no, I don't think it
Yeah.
wasn't ever just about that. You look at the Bill Finger comics and when he caught Joe Chill and Joe Chill died, it wasn't just like, well, time to hang out the cowl and just give it to Robin. Like it was always about protecting the innocent. It was always about making sure that what happened to him never happened to anyone else. And so to have Bruce reiterate that in this book was very rewarding, mainly because it was also an idea that I had in terms of why, like what Vicky's attitude would have been and what Bruce said. So it was very validating to get to that part.
Mm. Cool. So where we head to next in the
We get the introduction to Hugh Auslander, the doctor, which I'm just going to come out and say it. This is the spoiler version anyway. He's Hugo Strange.
Mhm.
He's Hugo Strange. It was very obvious to me that this was going to be Hugo Strange, which of course I liked because of the fact that I'm a huge Hugo Strange fan, as those who've heard my show know. So the fact that you get Hugo Strange and Clayface in this was pretty cool. I was just kind of curious though. I'm just like, okay, but why is he going under an alias? What's
Mhm.
up with this Hugh Auslander thing? Because in a lot of other versions of Hugo Strange, he he starts out as a more public figure, like in Prey,
Mhm.
right? He's a more public figure.
Oh, I love
Uh,
Prey. That's a good
yeah.
story.
So yeah, and that established him kind of being that's sort of the model, I guess, for this version where he's a renowned public figure, or at least a known public figure,
Mhm.
whose opinions people kind of respect, or some people respect in Prey, right? And this is kind of modeling it after that, and that would eventually turn into what we see in the Batman animated series with him being in charge for Arkham and that type of stuff. So, but I was like, okay, he's probably Hugo Strange. Why is he not going by Hugo Strange? And of course, there's a very good explanation later on. But
Mhm.
in the beginning, I'm just like, all right, this Hugh Auslander thing doesn't fool me.
You
And then
you
we've got
thought right with it. I was overthinking it whenever we were going into it because I was
yeah,
thinking like, huh, like because I didn't know about the back of the cover. I was like, resurrection, and then like there's a moment where he's looking at a picture of like one of his ancestors. He's like, or somebody that kind of people. He's like, oh, people think that I'm come from the same part of the country as this person does, and it kind of resembles him. I'm like, is this
mhm.
like Ra's al Ghul? Like that's what I was thinking at the time, just because of that. Like that would have been a cool like misdirect, and then later on like reveal that that was him back then, kind of thing. But
So it did make me wonder about that bit then, because I'm just like, well, Alex does have a point. Like that, like what is up with that resemblance? Is it just that Hugo Strange, because Hugo Strange changes his appearance between the events of '89 and this book, right? So it's just
yeah.
like, is it just because he modeled himself off of that and just claimed to be a descendant? I guess that's the simplest explanation. Um,
Did you
so,
know? Did you know that I was listening to the interview and they were talking about who he would have cast or who he thought
oh
Burton might have
no,
cast? He said
uh, no, I didn't.
Christopher Lee
Christopher
is
Lee.
maybe who he would want for Hugo
Mhm.
Strange or who he thought Tim Burton might go for. That'd be great, man. I could just hear that voice like talking to Batman and everything. Like it'd be really good.
Because it does feel like the model for the Arkham City voice, which is
Definitely.
the iconic voice in that we hear after
Yeah.
Arkham City.
Where he
'Cause-
goes, I am your successor, like
yeah,
that. Yeah, that whole
yeah.
voice. Sorry, anyway. Go to
But
your
yeah, no, well, in Echoes as well, in the '89 Echoes comic series, there are flashbacks that show Hugo Strange, who looks like he's modeled off of Christopher Lee. We haven't released the video that covers that yet, but um, it seems like again, it's another case of synergy that
Hmm.
might, unintentional synergy. I don't, I think, but here, I think that's the choice to go with. Christopher Lee did work with Tim Burton on Sleepy Hollow, so it's not like they never ended up working together. So it does make
Yeah.
sense. So that'd be awesome. Did he have a casting choice for Clayface?
I didn't get that far.
Okay.
But I'm sure if you ever want to come on, we could talk about it,
Let's talk
Mr.
about it, brother.
Miller. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like Clayface is tough to cast
Hmm.
because of the fact that he's the shapeshifter. So you kind of have to sell somebody on the idea of playing the person who's in between the shapeshifting, not necessarily like some of the fun of Clayface is more so the actors who are playing Clayface impersonating their character when it
Hmm.
comes to live action, I think, compared to being the guy who plays the shapeshifter. I think that's the issue with playing shapeshifters
Yeah.
from an actor's perspective is that it's not really fun for you. It's fun for the actors who are playing your shapeshifter character pretending to be someone else.
Yeah. Who would you, if you like, just do you have any ideas for somebody that would be
Mm.
a decent
Um,
fit?
Potentially, let me just look up that I got his name right because the way that they describe Basil Carlo is
Hmm.
that he's somebody who could pass as like a Frankenstein, like Frankenstein's
Oh.
monster type, So like you would want somebody who um who can play like the heavy sort of
Hmm.
thing. So the guy that I had in mind was potentially Brian Thompson. Brian Thompson has been,
Hmm.
he was in a lot of 80s and 90s stuff and usually played that type of character and would have the face, sorry, Brian Thompson, but he made a whole career out of it. He'd have the face of playing like the villain, the henchman, and would fit what they've got. And I think he was he was the main villain in Mortal Kombat Annihilation in let me look up, it was 97 or so. So we're looking around like appropriate time period, right? Where it probably would have been hit because I can't think of somebody who, would have hit big later who would have been an unknown at that time. I got to think about who probably could have worked in that era.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
could
who comes
see
to my mind.
I could see if it was modern, and this is the only one I could think of, maybe like a David Harbour type, just with like the how
Oh
his
yeah.
brow is, and also he can play like sympathetic type people, like because you want that big like gruff guy, what you were saying, but you also want someone, this is a very sympathetic character, so you want
Mhm.
someone who can play both and like really endear you in that way, and I think that he could probably pull that off.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. He's also Frankenstein in Creature Commando, so that does
There you
make
go.
sense.
He's already in the universe, like Clancy Brown, where he just loves playing DC
He's in every
villains.
universe. Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Let's see. So Basil Karlo wakes up in Auslander's ward and ends up escaping and as he escapes he doesn't know how to control everything and accidentally hijacks a bus. Batman hears about this. Also, the bus is called the D-27 bus.
Hmm,
Obvious reference to Detective Comics 27.
nice.
Um, and then Batman goes after him, but he has a specific uniform called the dynamic camo uniform, which I thought was interesting. I
Yeah.
looked it up. Unfortunately, there is no Kenner Batman dynamic camo uniform because I thought like, oh shit, is Miller tying this into the action figures? Like, is there one? And I'm like, oh, well, never mind. But still. Um, and then there's a bit here in chapter 8 where he confirms the idea that the yellow emblem on Batman's chest plate is to divert the gunfire to his chest rather than his head, which does, it comes from the Dark Knight Returns, but that's also in the Sam Hamm original script where Bruce mentions that to Vicky in the Batcave. But obviously, that's not in the movie.
Yeah,
Um,
I like that moment too. That was pretty cool.
and then let's see, Batman has his first confrontation with Clayface. And again, they're keeping him very sympathetic and stuff, and
Hmm.
it's kind of a draw. Clayface escapes. Alfred, here's a fun Easter egg for Batman Forever fans, but he's talking to Alfred, and Alfred's talking about like serving him, and Bruce says the drive-through isn't an option for the Batmobile.
That's right. I saw that too. And by the way, guys, while I have the opportunity, I didn't
Yes,
find an 89 related thing, but I do have my Batman Forever from this is from the 90s. Like I
yes,
got this. This is vintage, as they say now, Jesus. But yeah, so
Jesus,
I'm
yeah.
wearing that today.
Hmm.
And yeah, I did pick up on that too. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, continue.
No, it's okay. So that's all cool. And then Auslander very suspiciously doesn't want the police to go after Clayface, but and I like how Miller's playing this because if you don't know or haven't suspected that this guy is bad news, right? You just think like, okay, this guy's just kind of he's eccentric and he's caring, but you're also
Mhm.
somewhat suspicious at the same time. You're not completely sure
Yeah.
whether he's a villain or not, but you're kind of on the track of it, but you keep wanting to read to know more, right? You're
Hmm.
kind of deliberately playing off of like, hey, like maybe I'm not really trying to fool you, but you're going to keep reading because I'm not revealing everything. You want to know more,
Yeah.
right? So I think he knows he wisely didn't try to combine the Hugo Strange reveal with the villain reveal. It was
Yeah.
kind of just like he's gradually you like get more suspicious of him. He starts doing more and more bad shit, and then you get the Hugo Strange reveal, as opposed to trying to do it all at once.
Yeah, and this and like Hugh Auslander just by himself, like I remember at one point before we knew, like he's sometimes a trap that some writers will fall into is that like the character is only interesting once you reveal the twist. This character was already interesting before you reveal that extra twist that he is a
Mhm.
name character in the
Yeah,
comics. So I thought that was good because sometimes they can do that where they're just relying mostly on the twist instead
on
of
the reveal.
actually,
Mhm.
yeah, instead of actually like making the character interesting. Because the character's not interesting, then it's like, well, I guess that's cool, but that's the only cool thing about it is the reveal. So, like,
Did get interesting until he revealed he was whoever.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
good on you, Miller. Good job.
yeah, for sure. Let's see. We have Bruce has more dreams of the yeah. He basically has more dreams about Joker and Joker saying like I was just a kid when I killed your parents, which feels like Miller was also on the same internet forums as I was in terms of people being like, does this mean Joker knows Bruce Wayne is Batman? How could he have figured it out? Like, again, trying to fill in some of the holes. So I thought that was fun, even if it wasn't as necessary as how did the henchmen get up to the cathedral? Maybe it was a backup plan type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and then we do have a part where I'm skipping around, but we do have a part
Okay.
where the Batmobile shoots discs out
Mhm.
to hit different criminals and stuff, and that is not something that we saw in the movies, but that is in the original Daniel Waters script for Batman Returns.
Hmm.
So that is a capability that Miller is carrying over from that script. So that was cool. We've also got Batman saying a line that he'll say in Batman Returns, saying "wrong on both counts." I forgot what he meant by that, but I forgot the context of it. I just have to note that he said "wrong on both counts."
This guy
Um,
clearly did his research though, too. Like that's
yeah.
impressive. Even reading like drafts of scripts that weren't because it'd be one thing if he just like I'm just gonna turn the movies on and watch them and then
Hmm.
just write the thing out. But he actually really went in depth and like went into not only the movies but the scripts and everything. So like, props
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great. And we have a bit where Clayface is just like, well, Auslander knows how to cure me, so I'm going to pretend I'm Auslander. And so you've got this thing where Clayface is pretending to be Auslander, who's actually Hugo Strange pretending to be Auslander. So it's deep stuff. But during the
Yeah.
sequence, right, there's a bat signal that comes up, and
Hmm.
Clayface doesn't really know what that is because he's been in a coma during the time that the bat signal was introduced. So he thinks it's some sort of mouth. And that's a reference, of course, to real life where
Oh yeah.
executives at the time of 89 didn't really get the whole insignia. They
Uh-huh.
just thought that, like, what is this? Is this like a mouth or something? Are these
Yeah.
like and then they didn't realize that the empty space is actually not an empty space, it's the bat symbol.
Hmm. Well, I'm actually looking. I have the poster right here
Mhm.
too of Batman '89. But
Mhm.
I had that with like and also to finish that, I remember them saying like what is that like an X-ray or something? But like the like the traditional Superman symbol.
Mhm.
When I was a kid, I had a hard time almost deciphering it just because of how the like the S goes on there and how it all
Mhm.
kind of like blends together. Like I had a hard time deciphering that was an S when I was younger. So I kind of get where they're coming
Yeah,
from
but you
to
were
an
a kid.
extent. Oh, yeah, man. It's producers like. What do you want? I mean, John Peters was there, man. I mean, like we got people on there, yeah, with the whole like to tell me the paint me
Tell
a
me the story.
picture.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You read
yeah,
it to me. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Who the
But
fuck
yeah,
is Kal-El?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Who's like, this guy's Superman. He can't fly. But anyway,
Let's see. We also have some references throughout of the Phantom of the Opera because, Clayface is this, deformed figure who's hiding out in a theater. So I thought that was kind of a cool reference, not just to Phantom of the Opera, but also the Phantom of the Opera musical
hmm
is what inspired the finale to Batman 89. In the behind the scenes stuff, they talk about how originally it was going to be just Batman and Joker in a showdown, but then it was sort of believed there's a few factors. One, it was believed that Keaton beating up a 50 to 60-year old Joker was not really enough of an action-packed finale. Then you've also got John Peters is dating Kim Basinger at the time, and there's no way that you're going to cut down on her screen time and not have her, have more stuff to do in there. And it just adds more stakes anyway to have Vicky Vale in danger. Because when you read the original drafts of 89, a lot of like especially that first Sam Hamm draft, a lot of it is just so solid in terms of the character stuff or like, oh, this is
hmm
what they originally planned for Knox. And then you get to the third act and you're kind of just like, oh, well, maybe the movie does work better here. Right? Because it's
Yeah.
it's literally just like Batman confronts Joker, they talk, and then Joker gets killed. Like it doesn't
hmm
have like there's no Vicky who's held hostage, there's no stakes there, and there's no like you killed my parents, I made you, you made me first, which helps create that like that helps make that so memorable
hmm
as opposed to in the original script, nothing against Sam Hamm, but I was kind of like because I'm so used to the movie version, you get to the end and it's just like, oh, that's it. Like that feels like there should be more. Like Batman had like two lines, the Joker, you know, during that time. But it was during that apparently Peters and Nicholson went to see the Phantom of the Opera, and it ends with the Phantom taking, the girl Christine hostage and Raoul going after them. And they're just like, that's it. That's what we got to do. We got to do it like the Phantom of the Opera. So that's what inspired that third act. So that's cool.
I've
Uh,
never actually seen Phantom of the Opera, but either the musical or the
the Schumacher
movie.
movie. You
Yeah, or
should
any of them.
see I think it's the 20th or the 25th anniversary concert. Do not see the Schumacher movie.
Okay.
It is not, and it's not even because of necessarily,
Did he put nipples on
it's
the
not because of the
Phantom of the
nipples.
Opera suit or something?
No, it's more of just like this is one of those things where the musical you have these Broadway actors and they're amazing, right? They're up there.
hmm
They can act, they can dance, they can sing and sing really, really well, better than like anybody in the
Right.
industry. But then when you do these movies, it's like they cast whoever's famous who
hmm
can kind of sing or sings in a rock band, which is a
Yeah.
very different type of voice.
Yeah.
And like the singing just is off the entire time compared to what you've seen and stuff. So I rarely watch the like movie versions of musicals,
hmm
if ever, because I'm just like it doesn't match up. You just plug in or go to YouTube and look up like recordings of like the actual Broadway or West End actors doing it, and they just wipe the floor off of a lot of
hmm
these people who are famous for good reason, but they're not really like Broadway singers, they're not like musical singer types. So that's why I would recommend the recording of like the 25th anniversary concert, as opposed to the movie because the singing is just way better. It's just told way better. It's just better.
Yeah, definitely. I know that like it's kind of similar to like when they used to they've stopped doing this as much, I think, but like where there used to be like an animated project and they would just have who's a famous person instead of who's a really good voice actor, like that
Right.
kind of trend, that sort of thing.
Right. And they still kind of do that now. I think it's gotten maybe, and sometimes it's been a little better, right?
hmm
Like I felt like the cast that they got for the Mario movie, they at least had everybody sound like the characters, as
Yeah,
opposed to it just being like, okay, this is literally just celebrity voice inserted here. So they've gotten a little better at that.
definitely.
Um, we've got, okay, so here's where we got to the stuff that is really cool with the idea that the Joker might have survived Batman 89 and done it in a believable way because like he's street pizza at the end of that movie. So it's just like, okay, like are we really going to buy this? But the way that he does it is questioning whether or not that was even the Joker who fell from the cathedral, right?
hmm
And the body that's in the grave is not the Joker's body. And I was like, okay, I'm intrigued. And then Batman does bring up that Joker uh, had pre-planned a lot of the stuff that was at the parade and in the cathedral. What if he planned his quote unquote death, you know?
Yeah.
And one of the things that he mentions to Gordon was how Joker had told his men that he would kill 1,000 people an hour until Batman
Hmm.
showed up at the parade. And that's actually a line. I think it's in the script, but it's definitely in the novelization of Batman 89, which is a very key piece of dialogue if you think about it. Because in the movie, right, Batman
Hmm.
blows up Axis chemicals, and then Joker shows up, and he just says, "Junior Bird up in the air, Junior Birdman, miss me," and then and he just says, "Watch me," and then he flies off. Like, there's no clue in there about like what the hell he's gonna do.
Well, yeah, factoring into that, like I didn't realize, and there's like it plays into a larger element that you're going to get into pretty soon, I'm sure, but they
Hmm.
kind of point out Joker just kind of says bullshit all the time in 89, like just nonsense that makes no sense, like never rub another man's rhubarb and everything, like just crazy like dialogue. And it's just like, it's like, and you don't really realize it until you go back and watch. It's like, yeah, he's just saying like the weirdest shit sometimes. Like there's
Yeah.
some stuff that's iconic, like have you ever
Hmm.
danced with the devil in the pale moonlight? But like there's some other stuff where I'm of a mind makes a movie or something. Like he
Mookie,
says,
yeah.
yeah, some weird shit, and I'm just like, what? What? Like, I
It
don't
just feels
know.
like it's Nicholson riffing on set because a lot of that stuff is not in the original, the original stuff. Like the way that Sam Hamm wrote Joker was very different,
Hmm.
dialogue wise. In some ways, not as memorable because it wasn't, Nicholson improving
Yeah.
on set. So there is that factor. But yeah, it does seem a little weird that the whole like I'll kill 1,000 people an hour until you show up. Watch me. I'm going to be at the parade. It's kind of a key piece of dialogue there.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like that's the whole point of him showing up in the helicopter in that movie. But I guess Batman's such a good detective in that version that he knew Ju Junior Birdman meant that he was going to be killing people in the parade floats. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a fun thing that Miller wrote into it here because he had the same issue that I just brought up too.
Yeah.
And let's see. Yeah, it's during this whole thing that Gordon then gives Batman the laughing bag that was in Joker's coat, which again has something in it which could clue into the fact that he faked his death. And there's also kind of a cool thing about Gordon giving him the laughing bag because we do see the laughing bag in the Batcave in the Flash. Again,
Yeah.
timeline wise, I don't know if Miller even knew that was even going to be in there, but who knows?
It's all
Um,
right.
yeah. Uh, then we get more Max Shrek, which was again, it's one of those where I'm just like, I never really thought about um, ever seeing a scene between Jack Nicholson's Joker and Max Shrek, but and I know it's not technically the Joker, it's Clayface pretending to be Joker, but it was still kind of cool to imagine it, right? Where like Joker's in that round table conference room, um, with Max Shrek walking in and it's a fun chapter, even if it doesn't really, it's one of those where I'm just like, we might as well, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not hugely key to the plot. Um, some small things here. Selena mentions that she hates bugs because she thinks that it's going to be the fumigators. Um, I don't know if this is a deliberate reference, but in the original Daniel Waters script, she does put cockroaches in Max Shrek's coffee.
Oh yeah, I forgot. That's hilarious.
And then it has something about Max Shrek sweeps for listening devices all the time in his office. Bruce
Mhm.
does actually spy on him through a listening device in the original Daniel Waters script too.
Hmm.
Uh, so again, potentially possible reference or coincidental. Who knows?
Yeah. Happy
Um,
accident, maybe.
yeah, maybe. And then we've got the Batmobile. A lot of the stuff is planting the stuff that we'll see in Batman Returns. So Batmobile turning 180 degrees. That was in there. Um, we've got the quote unquote reunion between him versus Joker, which I thought was kind of cool.
Hmm.
Even though we know this is not Joker at this
Yeah.
point. And the Joker hits him with an explosive shell, which he then says is what Joker hit him with a Batwing, right, in '89.
Right.
Because that's another criticism, right, that comes up. Where it's just like, wait, Joker shoots one bullet and takes down the entire plane. Um, but in the 89 comic adaptation, Batman has a line as he's crashing, being like, "Explosive shell, I'm going down." Right. So it sort of explains that.
Nice.
And Miller's going even further by saying that there's an EMP that's part of it too. I'm like, okay, that's a cool addition too to this. Um, and then during this time, Batman's been investigating. Um, he's been investigating this, like, who is the body then? Who's the
Hmm.
Joker's body, right? And then they find that the name is Davis, and I'm like, okay, we'll see who this Davis guy is. And then it didn't really click for me until we get to the scene where it's revealed that Davis is the surgeon who operated on Joker. And that name of Dr. Davis is in the 89 novelization. So I really should have caught that. Um,
Nice. I actually, because I haven't read the novelization, I didn't finish it, but I started listening to the audiobook for it with the Mad Hatter
oh,
from
yeah.
the animated series. I think, and this is a weird thing, I do think, and I haven't told you this yet, but like on certain books, I do like like on the Batman Forever one, I do like that the person who played Dr. Burton, I weirdly like their Batman voice. Like I think that for whatever reason they were able to nail
Mm,
that kind of Batman voice. But yeah, like the 89 one, it's kind of charming because like it's just very goofy, and the guy is great, like a great actor, but it's a kind of goofy voice doing like these
mm,
different characters. They didn't really, I don't know, man. They didn't really have like the Batman as we think of it. A lot of that shit back then was Adam West, so I'm sure like
right.
he was just like, let me just, play it up a little bit goofier or something.
Mhm.
Like they didn't know what they were in for, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I think literally it was just like, well, how cool would it be if we got Bookworm from Batman 8, Batman 66 to read our book on tape of Batman 89, and that's it. Like I don't think they thought through too much about the uh the narration or the appropriateness. It is kind of cool to hear him as the Joker. That seems
Yeah.
like the only voice that really fits, and then everything else just kind of doesn't really work, whether it's Vicky or Batman. But
Yeah.
it's a nice little relic from it. It is very abridged and kind of goes into different directions than what's in the books. But
Really?
yeah, a like there's a few things that get changed, and I guess the biggest thing from what I remember is that um, I think oh, I might get this wrong because it's been a while since I covered it. I think in the audiobook version, Batman has always known that Jack Napier killed his parents.
Really?
Yeah. He's like,
Oh.
that's he's been like hunting him for that specific reason, as opposed to like the movie and the novelization kind of keeps it to how like he doesn't really realize it until he gets hit with the Ever Dance with the Devil in the Pale Moonlight type of line. But the audiobook abridges it so much that you don't even get the apartment scene in the audiobook. So you kind of need a different way to reveal that.
Is that the British version or the UK version that you have with like doesn't one of them have like an alternate ending or something
Yeah,
like that?
I got both. I got both. I think this is technically the first printing or the UK version, which is just Joker and hold on. I think it is just Joker and Vicky at the end.
Yeah. I
I might be wrong on that. Let's see. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Nice. Cool.
So,
I read I didn't read a lot of movie novelizations growing up, but back when this is show me that's gonna show you guys my age a little bit, but back when Spider-Man 3 was coming out, I was so excited to see that movie that I bought the novelization for it. And I remember the ending in there is different than like what the movie is. Like the ending in the book is I'm pretty sure it ends with like them dancing at that scene before,
oh, yeah.
and then
Hmm.
that's it. Like the book, I'm pretty sure after that it just cuts off, like with them like dancing at the end of
Hmm.
it, and there is no maybe that ending scene. We're gonna get back to Batman in a minute, but maybe it's a scene at the end where he has that whole thing about Harry and everything in the funeral. That
Hmm.
sort of thing might have been added later. Maybe the script that they got wasn't finished yet. I don't know, but
Hmm.
yeah,
It's been a
this
while. I've read that one too, but it's been a while since I've made that comparison.
definitely. All right, and then back to Resurrection.
Back to Dr. Davis, there is kind of a cool reference to the crime doctor, Matthew
Mhm.
Thorne. because there's a comparison between Dr. Davis and Matthew Thorne, and they bring him up as the crime doctor, and then there's also a Rupert Thorne reference, and this is all kind of cool, right? You know, because
Mhm.
you've got technically a reference to the comics, the comic character. You got kind of a reference to Batman the Animated Series, which saw like, hey, we've got the character named Rupert Thorne and a character named Matthew Thorne. Why don't we just make them brothers?
Yeah.
And then you've got Rupert Thorne being, you know, one of the original villains in the drafts of 89 before Sam Hamm came in, because he was in the Tom Mankiewicz drafts. He was in the Tim Burton, Julie Hickson treatment. I think he's in. I would think he's in the Englehart ones because Englehart was the one who created him in the comics. But whatever the case is, he's in a bunch of stuff. And then Englehart has claimed, as well as on my show, that
Mhm.
Carl Grissom is based off of Rupert Thorne. So it is kind of cool to get Rupert Thorne a little bit more solidified into the '89 universe. And basically, Miller adds in the wrinkle that even though Joker left Dr. Davis alive in that movie, he came back for him and used him as patient zero or tested, the Smilex on him, which is fucking twisted, but also makes a lot of sense. That was the
Yeah.
last dude who can connect him to a lot of other stuff. So, you know, that was kind of a cool addition there. Um, we've also got Miller giving the explanation of why Alfred let Vicky Vale into the Batcave, which isn't really honestly that much earth-shattering compared to
Mhm.
what you would think, because it's kind of already planted in the movie. I think Miller is just sort of vocalizing what you can already read between the lines of in the movie for anybody who didn't get it, which is the whole thing about, hey, like you were already going to tell her your secret. I was just supporting that. And also I want you to have a life outside the cave. Like that's all in the movie. But I think some people still, object to Alfred doing that in the movie. And then we get to one of the most fun chapters where, Joker is doing a broadcast and we get the perspective of everybody who's seeing it. And that's where we get a lot of the references to the Batman '89 comic.
Yeah.
So I was not expecting to read the words or the name Drake Winston in this book.
Yeah, that was really cool. I'm a really big fan of their version of Robin and the Batman '89 series. He's much more, how do I say this? He's much more like badass, I feel like, than like
Mhm.
other Robins are, where he's much more like almost like he's the leader of like him and Batman, which I think is kind of like a cool dynamic. Like he takes the lead a lot, or it just seems like it's much less of a mentor mentee kind of thing. It's much more of like a partner, as like
Yeah.
Batman Forever would say. But yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, I really like him.
Yeah, it was cool that there was this aspect. We have a previous scene of Batman working with Harvey Dent for a little bit,
Mhm.
which we never really got either in '89 or really the '89 comic series. So it's kind of cool that we have that. Jerome Otis is mentioned, the guy who was the mentor for both Drake Winston and Harvey Dent in the '89 comic series. We've got Barbara Gordon as a detective trainee, again, setting up the comic series. So
Yeah,
that's
I
cool.
forgot. That was good. Yeah, I like that too. That was cool that he didn't even have to do that, but like he seems like he wants to definitely like weave it, like you said, at least with the first one. I'm sure that they were working on the on I'm sure that Ham was working on the sequel around the same time that he
Around
was
the same,
working
yeah.
on this book, so it
Yeah.
was one of those things.
Yeah, we'll get into it because I have some ideas in terms of ways around it. And then we've also got a bunch of characters who we've seen in '89 or returns who are watching this. We've got the strong man from the Red Triangle Circus. The Red Triangle Circus King is a character in this. I was like, really? Okay. And at one point he saves Batman on the orders of someone else we'll get into.
Mm,
Uh, Mayor Borg, the mayor from the first movie, who's clearly on his way out because we're going to get a new mayor in Returns,
mm,
is in here. And then we've got Selena again. Selena is, um, at one point, her neon sign is mentioned in her
yeah.
apartment. And then there's a reference to her actually having met the Joker at one point outside of the Flugelheim Museum, which
That's
is
yeah, that was I didn't know if I needed that much
there's a
connections,
lot of
basically.
connection. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
it
like
is
yeah.
cool. But what I'll give Miller this with these
Mm,
is that like visually you can see it and it feels cool. Visually you can see Selena
yeah.
walking on the street and then like Joker's running out of the Flugelheim and tips his hat or something, his
Mm,
beret or whatever to her. I'm like, okay, I can kind of see that. yeah, it does feel very connected,
Mhm.
but like it's such a cool visual. I'll let it slide.
Did you try to, because I'm this kind of nerd. I was trying in my head to, because I know Gotham looks radically different. I was trying to, and somehow in my head, marry how Gotham looked like their area where Selena was at, and then
Mhm.
like the how 89 that Gotham looked. I was trying to fuse them together in my mind. Did you also try to do that when you were visualizing the city?
Um, it's weird because I just see them as taking place in different parts of the same city,
Hmm.
so it was a little it didn't really throw me off as much as like there's very clear differences with the Wayne Manor and the Batcave. I think is bigger to me than the city because the city takes place in different areas. I guess like I haven't really gone so far as to cover like okay, what does City Hall look like in comparison,
Hmm.
or what does there is a cathedral you kind of see with like because Penguin's kind of hanging out next to a gargoyle with the whole things change scene,
Hmm.
but there can be more than one cathedral in the city, so that's fine. Yeah, I don't think I had as yeah, I didn't really have issues with that so much as wondering if the next book is going to find some ways to explain stuff in terms of like buildings are getting rebuilt by Max Schreck, or
They
the
can
uh, the
make it
Riddler
work.
blows up Wayne Manor, and now they got to rebuild Wayne Manor, and that's why there's a different Wayne Manor in Batman Returns.
Speaking of Wayne Manor, I don't know if you were going to bring this up at some point, but like they even have callbacks to like the little like the if only I had some mirrors to tell me about when the bat signal was on, or like basically it's like he's going to work on
Oh
doing
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
like I
yeah.
remember that scene. Yeah.
There's that, and then like when Vicky comes back, they're back to that dining table.
Hmm.
I'm like, that's great. Um, and then eventually we get to the reveal that we had guessed at that point, but that Auslander is Hugo Strange, and it's here that we kind of get the backstory of Hugo Strange in chapter 38, and there's a mention of his mom being named Magda Strange.
Hmm.
Magda is actually the name of Hugo's assistant in the Englehart and Rogers run.
Oh.
So that's more of Miller doing his research. And then obviously we've got the Monster Men type of stuff. But the most surprising thing is that Hugo Strange is now solidified as having been in Batman 89.
Have you shipped a million of those things? Ship them
Yes.
all.
There's a great line here where he said Hugo never found out what that meant in terms of through a whole new door.
Yeah, that. I guess because I was trying to decipher that too. Like after I'm like, I guess that line doesn't make any sense. I'm like, I guess like a new door, like you're gonna have to have a new door because of how much you're shipping. I don't know, man. Like
Yeah, I
it's
guess.
just something Nicholson said on
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a
Because again,
random
that's not
day.
in the it's not in the script either. But that was kind of cool. So it explained that scientist in Access Chemicals uh was Hugo Strange. He was the one who was behind the government creating Smilex in the first place. A lot of this is tied into him, and he's sort of gone through some sort of reconstructive surgery or redone himself so that he looks different, right,
Mhm.
as Hugh Auslander, presumably looking more like Christopher Lee at this
Yeah.
point. So that was pretty cool. That was pretty awesome. Again, as a big Hugo Strange fan, I was like, all right, if you're going to bring Hugo into this universe, this is a pretty cool way to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Um, he
Go ahead.
sounded kind of the voice for him like again, it's like one of those things where it's like I was expecting him to sound like more like Christopher Lee like, but maybe you could make the excuse of like at that point he was putting on a voice maybe to kind of
Mm,
like blend in and kind of be in the background because I think like the actor it's like yes sir whatever like he's just got like this very meek sounding voice. I'm like I could headcanon this away to just be like Hugo Strange is just putting on a voice so that
yeah,
he blends into the background kind of thing.
that too. That too, because
Yeah.
it's just the yes sir part,
Yeah, yeah.
because he's just kind of surviving at that point in
Hmm.
terms of this backstory for Hugo Strange. Knox at one point references that he was talking about Gotham's greed, so reference to that line from '89. Then we have Batman having his first encounter with, Batman does figure out the Hugo Strange Clayface thing, so good detective stuff on
Hmm.
Miller's part for Batman. And then he encounters the monster men, and when he's being rescued, he's sort of hallucinating, seeing the Joker again, and he hallucinates these dollar bills with the Joker's face on it. This is actually a reference to a cut scene from Batman 89, where the money that he was handing out was supposed to be fake money, that when you rubbed off George Washington or whoever, it was going to be revealed as the Joker instead, and all these people died over fake money, which I think would have been a great reveal, a dark reveal, and it also pays off the whole like my face on the $1 bill line. So
Yeah.
I don't get why that was necessarily cut. I guess they didn't create the prop at all because I feel like we would have seen a picture or something
They
if they did
definitely
create that.
I know you guys covered this, but they definitely did create the like certain other things like
The
the
statue,
yeah, the
right?
statue, definitely
Mhm.
Joker's face on it and everything. I have this weird Mandela effect in my head whenever I'm like, and I think a lot of people do too, where it's like, no, that scene was in the movie. Like I can see it in my head with like, like somebody picks it up and like rubs it off and everything. Like
Right.
for whatever
Mhm.
reason, I can just picture that. But
Yeah, it is in the comic adaptation, but they did not model it off of a deleted scene because they they even said in an interview that the guy who rubs it off is actually drawn, his likeness is based off of one of the DC editors at the time. So it was not shot. Or if it
nice.
was, they just didn't have access to it. Um, so we've got this, heading into the third act or so, Clayface is sort of now reforming, right? In terms of like no longer being down for Hugo Strange's stuff. This is now more of a Hugo Strange as the villain. Clayface has been sort of manipulated along with the promise that he'll be cured. And, it's been pointed out that he's not going to be cured. And, all the stuff that Hugo Strange is doing is not the right thing. So, they kind of have he revolts against him, but, isn't too successful. He gets locked up. But we have this finale that takes place partially in a theater and then later on at the actual Gotham Cathedral. So harkening back to 89 stuff, and during that time, Batman whips out the Batcopter. We actually have two flying vehicles in this book. We got the Batcopter and we got this flying raft thing called
Yeah.
the Roost, I think. Um,
That
so
was it like how did you picture that? Because like they kind of explain it like it's almost like an elevator type thing, except without like something holding it into place. Or am I thinking of something? Was there like another floating thing at some point, or am I making that
I think
up?
that's the main thing. Yeah, I mean, I kind of picture just this platform of like maybe, some bat ears at the end of it or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Or maybe
Maybe
it's
he's
maybe it's just
just
like a giant batarang, you
maybe he's
know?
got like a little like it's like a scooter. He's got like a little
Oh yeah,
handlebar
that too. Yeah.
thing that could kind of work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking to see if like, hey, was this in any of the concept art or is it the Kenner toy? No, but the Batcopter was a Kenner toy for 89. So that is kind of cool. You can envision that version.
Nice.
And then you've got Clayface working with Batman, which, you know, has happened in the Rebirth era, that happened in Detective Comics Rebirth. So that is kind of a cool connection to the more
Mhm.
modern stuff. And then, basically they defeat Hugo Strange, and Bruce Wayne is off to the next adventure, and he's already building the Bat ski boat towards the end. But he then receives, there's been this character named Norman Pincus throughout.
Mhm.
And it's fairly obvious where they're going with this, but Norman
Yeah.
Pincus works at the Gotham Globe, but seems to really like puzzles, and he's the one who has figured out that Hugo Strange, Hugh Oslander is Hugo Strange, and he's the one who has the strong man from the Red Triangle Circus rescue Batman, and then he leaves, this final riddle on Batman's Batmobile, and it's pretty much implied that Norman Pincus is going to be the Riddler for the next book, Batman Revolution.
Mhm.
However, we run into it's kind of like what we brought up beforehand with Echoes. There's a few issues we've got right now. Um, when it comes to the Riddler stuff, they already introduced another version of Riddler in Echoes named Maynard. Edward Nigel Maynard is his full name.
Mhm.
So we've got more than one Riddler, but I'm just like, hey, they do have different names. So is there a way around this where you could just say, because I know realistically it's because it's different writers writing at the same
Yeah.
time, but could you just do it where just like there's two Riddlers in this universe, you know?
Yeah, not to be this guy, but I know I told you way back about my we're actually going to cover it for episode 50 of my show, but like I made a prequel Batman series called Crusader where it was like
Oh,
early
nice.
years like
Hmm.
Bruce and Harvey Dent were like best friends. He moves to the suburban area. Bruce does. Alfred's trying to get him away from the paparazzi and all the
Mm,
prying eyes and everything. And so in that, I had a character called the Question Mark Killer, who was kind of
mm,
like a proto kind of Riddler. So just kind of like that sort of thing. And in my head, I was just like, well, eventually maybe Riddler is a teenager at this
mm.
point and sees this guy, and he's just like, oh, well, this I like idolize him kind of
Right.
thing. Like it could work. Like you could make, I mean, even Gotham did that too with like the Jerome and like,
Jerome and
inspiring.
Jeremiah. Yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, that could be where it goes, but we need to see, what does Miller have in mind for Revolution and where are they going to go with the Maynard character in Echoes? Because
Hmm.
right now it's very early stages for both of them, but we meet them in very different circumstances. We meet Maynard in Arkham Asylum,
Hmm.
in Echoes, because here's the other issue. He was one of the guys that Hugo Strange experimented on because Hugo Strange in Echoes was the head of Arkham Asylum and has been
Yeah.
the head of Arkham Asylum for a while. So obviously that's not going to happen after this book because I'm just like, this dude has threatened the city, revealed that he was part of Smilex, and he gets turned into a monster man at the end. So I don't think he's
Yeah.
going to, as forgiving, I don't think Gotham laws are that lax that they're just going to be like, yeah, you can be in charge of an insane asylum after this.
Isn't
But
he a patient at the end
he's a
too?
patient. Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
patient at the end. They say something about like maybe he'll be a volunteer counselor, but I'm just like, I don't think Gotham's so corrupt that somebody would be stupid enough to make him in charge of the place afterwards. But maybe a way around that is that all the stuff that Echoes refers to in terms of the
Hmm.
experimentation happens within that 6 month period of time between 89 and Resurrection. Again, very busy 6 months because the guy got reconstructive surgery, became Hugh Auslander,
Yeah.
became the head of Arkham Asylum, did these experiments on the Riddler and other people and everybody who's in that thing, and then he went on to Gotham General to cure Smilex victims all in 6 months. We all feel like slackers in comparison, but I guess that's how Hugo Strange operates. But that's
Yeah. Gotta do better, I guess.
that's the way that I guess could operate, and then he gets returned there as a patient, and maybe that's where he meets Dr. Jonathan Crane, who treats him
Hmm.
there and learns from him because Crane does say that he learned from Hugo Strange, and then it's indicated that Hugo Strange died of mysterious circumstances before Echoes, so who knows? But again, I know realistically it's because Ham was writing this at the same time as Miller. So that's why there are these, continuity issues.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like you could find some way around it. If I do this, for New Verse or something, we'll probably find some way to connect the two so it doesn't feel like it's a complete, 180 without it feeling like I'm just doing too much creative license that
Yeah.
isn't an adaptation or more my own thing for those things. But I think there could be ways to reconcile it.
Well, I know Riddler in this, or at least this version of him in Resurrection, he's a little bit more, I would say, kind of like he wants to help, but it's also kind of like that conceited, like, how are they so stupid they haven't seen this yet? Like he's a little bit more
Mhm.
helpful in this version. He's not outright villainous, like even like you said, helps Batman at some point.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And Maynard in the Echoes version is a little bit like that too. And I'm kind of just like, well, if we're going to do this, some guy's got to be worse than the other. Like, there's got to be
Yeah.
some other differences, But I get it. It is technically the same character that they're dealing with. They're all going off the Riddler prototype, or the
Hmm.
Riddler template. So I can imagine that they each have their own individual ways of how they're going to develop it. But I do like how he's planted in this, and I'm really curious to see what happens in Revolution in terms of like
Hmm.
how far do they go with the Riddler, and how many books is Miller going to do that take place in between the two movies.
I think it's a duology, is what I heard. Like just two books. I heard it's a duology.
Could be
So
cool. But I could
yeah.
also see this being popular enough that he's just like, yeah, maybe it'll be a trilogy. Like we'll see how, you know, if Revolution just leads directly into Returns or whatever. But
Hmm.
or maybe it's one of those things where he just considers this to be, Resurrection, Revolution, Returns. That's why it's the R name.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense. I know also briefly we did talk about how Clayface in this is a bit more grounded. I
Hmm.
did remember this is one of the parts I remember from his interview where he was talking about that. He said that the reason why he's not a clay monster is because in 89 and returns, I think to an extent, like there's nothing like that in those. Like, yes, there is some
Yeah.
like otherworldly stuff, but he's like it is somewhat grounded. Like grounded is crazy when you think about 89, but like you
Or
have to
returns, yeah.
also, yeah, you have to also think of it like he meant grounded as in like there's not these wild otherworldly stuff like, a giant clay monster and stuff like that. Did you like the that element where it's a little bit more grounded with like the whole him changing his face and having to wear wigs and stuff like that?
I did it because it didn't make it so easy. It didn't make it so like he could easily just turn into somebody from head to toe on a dime. I like that aspect. I like that it also kept him in terms of being sympathetic because you write in stuff about how he has a different body from the Joker, and so he had to hide
Hmm.
it with like the way that he moved or the clothes that he wore. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool touch, and
Or
it keeps us
his,
in, the perspective of Basil Karlo.
yeah, his height too. Like that was like one of the things too to kind of throw it off. Because I know like they had a height difference, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool too. Yeah, definitely. And he's lucky that Lawrence is so dumb because like otherwise I feel like he would have immediately picked up on like, wait, this is not the same guy. Because even then, like I think it doesn't
Hmm.
take Bruce long to realize like this guy is a little bit too verbose. Like he's just
Hmm.
riffing the whole time. Like
Right.
he's wasting time because like and I know this has been turned into a meme with this with Clayface, but like the whole thing of like it's a performance and like you feel bad for this guy because
Hmm.
a really relatable element to him is that like he never got his shot basically like and he knows that if he did he would be amazing, but no one ever gave him a chance basically.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. For sure. And I think it's another thing that makes this version unique because of the fact that in other versions he's already famous, right?
mhm,
Like the famous Basil Karlo, like that's in the original Golden Age stuff, or the Matt Hagen version in Batman the Animated Series. He was already a big star. So making him somebody who didn't even get his chance, it makes him sympathetic when he takes over that one guy. He takes over this actor's performance at one
mhm.
point, and he nails it. And like, yeah, he pretty much hijacked this guy's thing and kind of, threw him into a trunk and stuff, but like you get it. Like
Yeah.
you don't feel yourself hating this guy. You understand him, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that guy was not that it's okay, but that guy was an asshole anyway. And basically, the book goes out of your way to be like, do not feel sorry for this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, overall, I was very impressed. This was definitely a treat.
Mhm.
That again we weren't expecting because I don't think this was really announced until a few months ago.
Yeah, it kind of
Right. So
came out of nowhere, and in some ways.
yeah, yeah, and I think that he's just been really holding on to it because clearly, right, this is already finished and edited, and he's working on the other one or has already been working on the other one. So, I mean, can only imagine what NDAs this guy had to sign before this got officially released. But yeah, would definitely recommend for all 89 fans, especially ones who, might not have been so super like enthralled by like say like the return of Keaton in The Flash or might not be the big fans of the 89 comics, this might be more to your liking. Give this one a chance. It's from somebody
Yeah,
else who's different and who's a fan like you. So give it a chance.
definitely. Yeah, and there's a bunch of like it worst case scenario, you read it, and there's a bunch of nostalgic callbacks to things you already like anyway. So I mean, like there's stuff for everyone in this, definitely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Vicky also, I thought, because I don't think we talked much about her. She definitely was a standout. Like I really did like her scenes in this,
Hmm.
like that she was there to help Bruce, but it wasn't like I'm not falling back in love with you or something. Like this is just because I care
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. And
thing.
I
Yeah.
like that too. I thought that, if you're not going to cover the story of the breakup, which he kind of did just in backstory stuff. But if you're not
Hmm.
going to have them do the breakup and be a couple, then, you know, we've got so much going on in this thing anyway. We don't need another romance thing. So I think that her getting to help out in this way was a good use of her, a good way to bring her back in.
Definitely. And then That's all I got, unless you got some other things we can go
Not
through.
really. Not really. We've got yeah, so yeah, check out Batman Resurrection. Thanks guys for for listening in to us talk about this because this is really something that I've wanted to talk about, but I can only really talk to Alex about right now because we're the only ones who have finished this. So,
Yeah. I have that a lot too sometimes with like certain things. I'm like, damn it, like this is I need to talk to someone about this, but no one's
yeah.
read it or
Hmm.
anything. Like I went through like a noir, and I still like noir, but I went through like a noir phase where I was reading a bunch of those books and everything and just really getting into it. I mean, like I would talk to you, but like for the most part, I would just be torturing my wife with like, oh yeah, and then this happened. She's like, I really don't care about noir. Can you please stop talking to me
You
about
wanted to
this?
learn about Sam Spade and his dead partner?
She's like, no, I don't. I don't like noir. I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'm gonna talk to Ben about it then."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely cool. That's another reason why I was intrigued because I know you mentioned at the beginning you wanted to read this, and I'm like, I remember hearing about it. I'm like, well, like let me check this out too because it was kind of mysterious, like resurrection. What does that mean? Like that kind
Mhm.
of whole thing. I'm like, did they just name it Resurrection because Batman Returns, like the whole R thing? And I was like, let me just go ahead and get into this. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I really definitely reflect a lot of what Ben said. It's a solid book, great. I loved it. It was great, great stuff. Definitely you could almost pair this with at least the first 89 comic as like kind of if you got like an
Mhm.
afternoon or some time to kill or maybe just a day, you can read this and read 89 and like I've definitely been trying to get into that 89 mindset
Mhm.
recently because I know I had this coming up. I even have shown this multiple times, but I even have this Bob the Goon
Bob. Yeah.
figure
Hmm.
missing the hat. But yeah, so definitely guys check it out. I guess we'll just go ahead and go into plugs and then wrap this whole thing up. So you go first.
Sure. So you can check out my podcast over at Superhero Stuff You Should Know. We're at Superhero Stuff Pod on Instagram. I think we're Super House Pod on Twitter or X or whatever. And then you can check out, I'm wearing my shirt for Alter Ego, which is my own indie comic series. First issue has already been out. Alex did the variant cover, as we talked about in a previous episode.
Yeah.
And issue two is coming out in November. So that's on its way, and there'll be another comic series that is sort of teased at the end of that, along with issue three. So got a lot going on for that, but you can find the social medias for that on both Instagram and Twitter at Ben Juan Alter Ego.
Nice.
So I think that's pretty much what I've got. Other than that, you can also check out my voice work in the Batman stuff with either New Verse Creative, has some of my stuff, as well as the Bat Feed, their Arkham tape series. I did the voice of Ra's al Ghul, and you'll hear me in other stuff that we. I wish I could reveal it now, but I haven't gotten the go ahead to reveal it. But I'm in other stuff that's coming up, so that's all I can say.
Yeah, awesome. Can't wait to see it. That bat feed stuff was great. Like just like very different feel. I'm not as into analog horror that much or didn't know a lot about it, but if you
Yeah, he
guys
introduced me to that.
yeah, if you guys know about that or even mildly interested in it, it's already got Batman related stuff in it. So like, it's kind of already if you're into Batman like we are, then that's kind of your foot into the door kind of thing.
Mhm.
Definitely go check it out. For me, I obviously have this show, my wife's show, if you talk to her, so this is Night of the Batman is her show.
Mhm.
And then I have we talk everything Batman here. And then I also have flashbacks of Flash Rewatch podcast. We are going to be releasing episode 19 in the near future. Hopefully have that recorded here soon. And promise we're almost to the end. It's a slow process, but we will get to the end of the season before this year is over. Yeah, it's been a process. There's some behind the scenes stuff going on. Will's got a baby on the way, so like we're doing the best we can right now. He hasn't gone on maternity or paternity leave yet, like Zach did back in the day. So I'm holding my breath.
18-year paternity leave.
Yeah, yeah, I'm holding my breath. I'm like, I've told Amanda, and like, Will seems to be down to still be doing it, but I'm like, just in case, might need you to slot in for a few of these. But
Gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It,
definitely. Well, if y'all know what I'm referring to, they used to have a host on Superhero Stuff You Should Know named
yeah.
Zach, who went on paternity leave. Anyway,
Yeah.
keep
I did.
going.
Are we is this being released like basically after we're done recording, or is this are we like what's your idea in terms of release for this?
Oh, basically as soon as possible. I'm gonna try
Okay.
to get this out before everybody, like you said, like we're one of the first few to release this, so before anyone else.
People are still reading it.
Yeah, before anyone else gets to it, basically. Like my goal is to have this release either tomorrow or Friday, maybe.
Sweet.
Yeah,
All right.
and
Yeah, I'll spread it around.
cool. And then my other two plugs are Tangential Exchange. I have two in the chamber for that I haven't released yet. And that's basically me and my friend Trip get drunk and kind of like we don't get drunk, we just drink on there and try to make each other laugh, stay on topic while also still drinking. So like that kind of is our craziest show. And then I have What Mean, which isn't defunct, but I haven't done a lot of stuff recently with it. That will come back in the future. I'm just saving that for whenever I have something I really want to talk about that's not like anything related under like superhero banners, basically. So yeah, that's it
Mm.
for me. Um, Ben, you know this, at the end of each episode, we do our outro that's not an outro. So, and
Hmm.
I'll give you a countdown, but
Yep. I'll join in.
yep, we'll say we'll come up with an outro eventually. So in
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, we will
We'll come out
come up
with
with an
outro
outro eventually.
eventually. Nailed it.
Nice. Yeah, nailed it. Perfect.